Well, people living on the Potlatech First Nation in Nova Scotia are receiving help from their neighbors because of a lack of clean, fresh drinking water.
I cried for what's going on to my community, the community that I love, my Budlodik, our Budlodik. You know, people here are very, very good people.
More than 20,000 liters of fresh water have arrived. It's being brought in bottles. Last Tuesday, residents discovered what they describe as dark, foul-smelling liquid coming from their faucets, and tests have indicated high levels of iron and manganese in the water. Now, Health Canada says those mineral levels will not have any impact on health, although they can affect the color and taste of the water, they concede. Residents are calling for an environmental study. Well, author, activist, and lawyer Pamela Palmater chairs Ryerson University Center for Indigenous Governance. Professor Palmater, it's good to see you again. Government inspectors say the water's color and smell are caused by those minerals we mentioned, iron and manganese. What's your understanding of why it showed up, though, in the taps just in the past 2 weeks?
Well, I think there's an ongoing problem with water and infrastructure in First Nations. And I mean, for any of those Health Canada officials that said this water is healthy and safe, I would invite any of them to bathe in that water, drink that water, or cook their food in that water. And of course they wouldn't do that. I mean, at any point in time, you have about 1/5 of all First Nations in Canada that don't have clean drinking water. This isn't new, and the situation in Budlodig is something that has been building up, obviously, and hasn't been addressed.
This has been something, as you've just alluded to, that's been going on for several years now.
Yeah, exactly. And in many First Nations, they've been on boil water advisories for more than 10 years. This is something that the federal government has known about. And a couple of years ago, they did a massive engineering study. It was Negan and Burnside. And they said that just to bring the water and sanitation infrastructure up to code would be in the billions of dollars, not including ongoing operation and maintenance. And they have refused to do that. They simply let this crisis build and build and build.
To cite a couple of affluent neighborhoods in Toronto that we're both familiar with, if this were happening in Rosedale or the Bridle Path, do you think the situation would be handled differently than it is with the community of Potlatech?
Of course. Look at Walkerton. Look at what happened. It got in the media. It stayed in the media. I mean, every resource available was put into that community. Yet First Nations live without clean drinking water for years and years at a time. Sometimes it's contaminated and the kids end up developing skin diseases. We all know contaminated water can lead to infections and death. Why on earth is the federal and provincial government allowing this to happen? I guarantee if the City of Toronto decided to spend its water and sanitation infrastructure on something else like Toronto Day celebrations and had a situation like this, citizens would be up in arms.
The Aboriginal Atlantic Policy Congress is going to be meeting, as you know, in Halifax this coming week. What do you expect they'll do to address this problem?
Well, I imagine they'll come up with an emergency action plan. You'll notice that the water that was being brought into Budlodig was actually from Eskasoni First Nation. It wasn't even from the federal and provincial government. So the people with the least amount of money are the ones that are having to try to deal with this crisis. And the federal and provincial government should step up. It's one of the promises that Trudeau made when he said, there's no relationship more important to me than the one with Indigenous peoples, promised billions in infrastructure, and we haven't seen it.
Yeah, with that, I want to note that you're a Mi'kmaq citizen, a member of the Eel River Bar First Nation in northern New Brunswick. What's the Trudeau record so far in your view?
Well, it's not a good one. Every single promise, except for the inquiry, has not been kept. And we're talking about critical socioeconomic issues, housing crisis, water crisis. You've got tens of thousands of kids in care, overrepresentation in prison. And in about 3 weeks, I'll be going to the United Nations to testify that Canada is not addressing these conditions. And for Indigenous peoples, our situation is getting worse, not better.
Ryerson University Chair of Indigenous Governance, Pam Palmater. Dr. Palmater, good to speak with you.
Thanks.